Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into a documentary-style investigation of something I guarantee you felt recently. I'm talking about the total collapse of our collective attention span and a structural solution proposed by one of the most influential productivity philosophies of the last decade. We're looking closely at Georgetown computer science professor Cal Newport's groundbreaking framework, deep work. If you've ever ended a completely exhausting workday and realized you accomplished absolutely none of your actual high-level goals, well, this explainer is going to decode exactly why that happens, what it's physically doing to your brain, and how some of the world's highest performers are architecting their way out of all the noise. Okay, let's dive right into this with a number that honestly should genuinely alarm you. According to UC Irvine researcher Gloria Mark, who has tracked screen behavior for years, 47 seconds is now the median time modern knowledge workers spend on a single screen before switching their attention. And half of all people observed are switching even faster than that. Down from 2.5 minutes back in 2004, our daily professional lives have essentially been reduced to this frantic, fragmented sprint of micro-interactions. But here's where the math gets genuinely brutal. It takes approximately 23 minutes to fully regain your cognitive focus after just one of those rapid-fire interruptions. Think about that. When you pair a 47-second attention span with a 23-minute refocus tax, you start to see this massive, invisible drain on our cognitive potential. People love to call this multitasking, but the science shows it's really just jumping between tasks very, very quickly, and it quietly consumes the absolute best parts of our working days. Section 1. Defining deep work, the antidote to distraction. Cal Newport, the author who originally diagnosed this condition, realized something wild. The very tools his own computer science industry was creating were actually destroying the cognitive environments necessary to do meaningful work. So, to combat this, he divides all professional effort into two very distinct categories. First, you have deep work. These are professional activities performed in a state of completely distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit. These efforts create new value, they improve your skills, and they are incredibly hard to replicate. On the flip side is shallow work. This is the non-cognitively demanding, logistical style stuff. Slack triage, status updates, forwarding emails. It's often done while you're partially distracted, it doesn't create much new value, and frankly, it's pretty easy to replicate. Now, the danger isn't that shallow work exists. The danger is that it completely takes over if left unchecked. Which brings us to the big idea that made Newport's book so famous, the deep work hypothesis. He argues that the ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare at the exact same time it is becoming incredibly valuable in our modern information economy. Because global outsourcing and AI automation are handling way more of those easily replicated tasks, the premium is now on individuals who can quickly master hard things and produce elite-level quality. Basically, if you can cultivate this increasingly rare skill of unbroken focus, you will disproportionately thrive. Section 2. The neuroscience of focus. To truly understand why this framework is so powerful, we have to look under the hood at what is physically happening inside your brain. So the crucial point is understanding the total myth of multitasking. The human brain is simply not designed for it. When you switch from writing a report to checking an email, your brain doesn't just cleanly transition. It creates what researchers call attention residue. A piece of your attention literally remains stuck on that unresolved email, even as you try to get back to the report. Neurologically, this constant task switching activates your brain's stress response. It spikes your cortisol levels and overactivates the regions associated with emotional regulation, which essentially burns out your cognitive control. But on the flip side, when you actually embrace deep work, you trigger a biological upgrade. Deliberate, focused practice stimulates the production of a substance called myelin. Myelin is a fatty tissue that wraps around the nerve fibers in your brain, acting sort of like the insulation on an electrical wire. Dr. Daniel Coyle actually calls it living broadband. The more you focus intensely without distraction, the more myelin you build around those specific neural circuits, which permanently increases the speed and precision of your thinking in that area. You are literally rewiring your brain's neuroplasticity. And the long-term neurological benefits of this, they are absolutely staggering. Consistent deep work strengthens your prefrontal cortex, which is basically the command center for executive attention. It also stimulates the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which helps you grow new neurons. It builds a cognitive reserve that actively protects against age-related decline. In fact, research shows that individuals who regularly engage in this kind of cognitively demanding activity have a 32% lower risk of developing dementia. So deep work isn't just some clever productivity hack. It is essential biological maintenance for your brain health. Section 3. The 4 rules of deep work. So how do we actually pull this off in a world that feels completely designed to distract us? Well, Newport outlines 4 rules that form the tactical meat of his philosophy. Rule 1, work deeply. This means you must deliberately architect your schedule and your environment to actually support focus. Rule 2, embrace boredom. We literally have to train our brains to stop craving the constant dopamine hits of novelty. Rule 3, quit social media. We'll dive into that provocative one in just a second. And Rule 4, drain the shallows. This means relentlessly auditing your tasks to minimize that low-value logistical busywork that eats up all your peak energy. And this brilliantly illustrates Newport's boldest and probably most controversial rule: quit social media. Newport totally challenges the typical any benefit approach, where we justify using these platforms just because they offer some minor occasional value. Instead, he advocates for a craftsman's approach, where you perform a rigorous cost-benefit analysis on your network tools. Because these platforms are built on variable reward schedules intentionally designed to hijack your dopamine system and addict you, the massive cost to your attention span almost always outweighs the marginal benefits of staying superficially connected.
Section 4. Scheduling your decks.
Look, Newport gets that a freelance writer has completely different constraints than, say, a corporate manager. That's why he details 4 distinct scheduling philosophies to fit your actual professional reality. First, if you have total schedule control, the monastic philosophy eliminates nearly all shallow obligations for pure depth. The bimodal approach splits your time, requiring at least full-day stretches of deep work mixed in with normal days. Then there's the rhythmic approach, which is definitely the most common. That's dedicating a specific, highly protected block of time every single day. Finally, the journalistic approach is for those with low schedule control, who have to expertly shift into deep focus at a moment's notice whenever a random gap appears in their chaotic day. To put that into perspective, let's look at how vastly different successful people architect their time. Bill Gates famously utilizes a pretty grand gesture of the monastic approach. He takes 2-week think weeks twice a year, literally isolating himself in a cabin to read and strategize with 0 interruptions. Conversely, Cal Newport himself uses the rhythmic approach. He writes during the exact same 2-hour morning block every single day. By permanently locking it in, willpower is just completely removed from the equation, and that focus simply compounds over months and years.
Section 5. The privilege of focus.
Now, while the science behind deep work is incredibly sound, the real-world application of it has drawn some very valid criticism. A prominent counter-narrative, articulated by critics like the writers at the Pretty Terrible blog, points out a bit of a blind spot. Their criticism reads, "This sort of thinking devalues the administrative work that makes it possible for people like Cal Newport to lock themselves away in offices and think their important thoughts." This introduces the argument that Newport's whole framework might carry a distinct layer of privilege, heavily dependent on someone's actual position in an organization. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is breaking down that counter-narrative. The argument here is that deep work fundamentally assumes an individual actually possesses a high degree of autonomy and schedule control. By heavily prioritizing solitary, elite output, critics argue the philosophy inadvertently devalues the highly necessary logistical and administrative work performed by support staff, assistants, and service workers. They point out that the ability to completely unplug, ignore emails, and retreat into deep focus is often a luxury afforded precisely because someone else, often lower on the corporate ladder, is handling that invisible, constant stream of administrative chaos. Which brings us to the ultimate tension at the heart of today's explainer. The neurological and economic benefits of deep work are virtually undeniable, right? It clearly makes your brain healthier and your output rarer. Yet, the systemic reality of modern work means not everyone actually has the power to just turn off the noise. So I want to leave you with this to ponder as you look at your own calendar tomorrow morning. Is deep work a universal professional standard we should all be striving for? Or is the ability to truly focus becoming the ultimate modern luxury?